All right, good afternoon, and welcome to the latest installment of Campus Conversation. I'm Josh Moore. I'm the Program Director for Sports Marketing and Media, and very excited about today's session. And the reason that is because, there are so many of our students come to us looking for jobs in sports, and they're infatuated with some of the big names, right? The names that you know when you're 12 or 14 or 16, companies with jobs and careers that you understand kind of intuitively. And the truth is that while those are all good, many of them are good, there are so many other great careers in this industry that you don't know about until you've been immersed in it a little bit. And there are careers that feed your passion for sports, your passion for business, your passion for sports business, and these are careers and jobs that are really fulfilling and have teeth. And our guest today is going to be able to talk to you about his career in sports and his great organization that does incredible work here in Central Florida. So with that, let's get started. I want to introduce your interviewer for the day, the course director from our Sports Business Models class, George McNeely, and our guest, the president and CEO of the Central Florida Sports Commission, John Bisignano.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Interviewer du jour. How many people have been in my Sports Business Models class? I see a lot of familiar faces. You look a lot smarter than you did when you were. John is the President, Chief Executive Officer of the Central Florida Sports Commission. They serve 4 counties, Osceola, Lake, Orange, and Seminole County, and they serve the city of Orlando. Those of you who are in my class remember we talked about managed service firms, those middlemen, middlewomen firms where it's not the league and it's not the sponsor, but they have an integral part. They got all access passes. They've got very important roles in the orchestration of events. I would characterize the Central Florida Sports Commission as one of those managed service models that brings opportunities, tourism opportunities to Central Florida. A former Disney executive, we can certainly spend some time today talking about heads and beds, which is what it's all about. Talk a little bit about the Central Florida Sports Commission and your purpose.
Sure. The Central Florida Sports Commission, there's, to take you a little bit back on what a sports commission is, there's about 450 cities across the U.S. that pursue events that generate economic impact. Economic impact is driven by visitors that occupy a bed. So here, our competition, there's probably about 30 cities out there that are truly our competition and what we compete for. We compete to bring events, whether they're events at the level of a Final Four or a Super Bowl or an NCAA championship, or to something as simple as a youth lacrosse tournament or a youth soccer tournament, youth volleyball tournament. So the Central Florida Sports Commission, as George said, we represent 4 counties, and our primary purpose is to pursue attract events to this destination that drive new visitors and put heads in beds. And there's a lot more that goes to it along that point, but that is our key business purpose.
Last time I talked to you in a public setting, I was moderating your NCAA news conference announcement where
Yes.
some of your bosses were present, and Mayors Jacobs and Mayors Dyer, and we had our partners from Stetson University. And those are the fun days, aren't they?
Yes,
when you get
of course.
to announce really cool stuff.
Yeah. So as George is saying, we do 2 types of events. Marquee events, those are the ones that fill the Amway Center, the Citrus Bowl, the New Orlando City Soccer Stadium. So those are the ones that grab the headlines. Like, for instance, yesterday we just hosted AAC Media Days for men's college basketball. So you had 11 schools, some of the top brands in basketball, college basketball, with UConn, Cincy, Memphis, along with their coaches here. So Larry Brown in town, among others that were here, that were made our push from a business focus is that A, create the excitement that the event is here, and then B, sell tickets to the event. So we did that announcement. So for those marquee events, those are the ones that are fun. Those are the ones that the entire team, we have 15 on our team, get really excited about, that they're on the floor right in the middle of something that's exciting.
If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to shift gears for a minute and talk about your career path and your college interests.
Sure.
We've got college students in the audience. Maybe you have some common interests.
Yeah, sure. And I'm going to use it just basically on what we look at. So whether we as defined by when I was in a role at the Walt Disney World Resort in sports, or we as managing and leading the Central Florida Sports Commission. So I'm going to use the storytelling broken down into 3 points. And these are the 3 points that we specifically look for in any candidate that's coming into a role. So be a great team player. You want to be a great team player, be part of a high-performance team. So I went to a small business school, Bryant College in Smithfield, Rhode Island. You know, I was a business major, had a couple different job opportunities out of college that were what I would say boring, or I could basically try something that really I was interested in, coming to the Walt Disney World Resort in Florida. I accepted the role, and I started with Disney in June of 1980. And I'm born and raised in Bristol, Connecticut. The headline in the Providence Journal, where Bryant is, had Bryant College grad lands dream job at Walt Disney World. Well, my dream job is I was a busboy. So I bussed tables at Disney's Polynesian Resort. I had to learn a spiel. This is our specialty cocktail menu. We also have a full-service bar. Leilani is your hostess. Have a magical day. So I learned from that point on to what being a great team player was and being part of a high-performance team. So great college education. Bryant at the time was very, very expensive. And here I am. The first gig I had was to be a food and beverage host or a busboy. But I'll tell you what, I took a lot of pride in it. I was the absolute best busboy. My peers didn't know that I wanted to be the best busboy. They knew that I was a great team player and wanted to make sure we delivered great service, and I was good to my fellow cast members in it. So that was my first gig, and I had a lot of opportunity to transition through those next 32 years at Disney.
So I got a couple of people I know personally and I've taught in this room, and they're dying to ask you a question. What public relations firm did you use to get a news release that you got a busboy job?
Wow, that's a good one. It didn't. It was called my resume. It was basically how we got it. That was it.
What were your college interests?
College interest, I was very, very active. So from an academic standpoint, I'll tell you what, the first year, Dad was ready to pull me out because I had a lot of other interest in it. But what I did was had a lot of great mentors in college that I would consider mentors throughout my career that I used going from my freshman year through my senior. So from an academic side, I was an accounting major, found that was not my wheelhouse. So I transitioned to business administration. I had some really, really great leaders just from what I would call basic marketing, basic management. But I knew that finance was a key part of the role, and even though I transitioned out of an accounting major, I took enough finance classes to get well-rounded in it. But it wasn't just about school. As I would say, is I had every job on that campus. So whether it was working in the food service, volunteering, different events that were on campus, I made sure I took advantage of everything that was going on campus life.
When I first met you, you were working for what's been branded ESPN's Wide World of Sports. It was originally Disney's Wide World of Sports. Many of you have been out there with class field trips and for Brave spring training and things like that. I know we know a mutual lady who had a couple of coffee stands in the theme parks, and one day Corporate Alliances said to her, "We're thinking about funnel cake stands." She says, "Oh, I know how to make those." They said, "You got it. This is the infancy of Disney." And she goes home and says, "What's a funnel cake?" And she does research, and she figures out how to sell funnel cakes, and now she's a millionaire vendor participant out at Disney.
Yeah, exactly.
So seizing opportunities is really, really important.
Sure.
And you talked about getting an entry-level job at Disney World. You talked about having a finance interest, finance background. I'm sure opportunities came your way where a leader over there, a supervisor, they call them leaders at Disney, many of them are, and they came to you and they said, can you work a spreadsheet for us? Can you do this? Can you do that? Talk about the trajectory of how you went from a busboy and over the course of 15 years or so grew to be a leader at the Wide World of Sports Complex, constructing big deals.
Yep. So going from being that team player and then being part of a high-performance team, that was the first bucket. The second bucket is guests. So when you're looking at knowing who your guests are and exceeding their expectations, so their basic needs along that line. So within that time frame of being a busboy and going into my first entry level, what I would call a supervisor role, which meant running the front of a house of a restaurant, it really came down to knowing who your guests are and exceeding their expectations along that line. So it was working with your peers, knowing that we're all part of this together. It's part of a relay race to give great guest service. And within that time frame, my leader is actually the president of Walt Disney World Resort today. His name is George Kalogridis. Was a cast member back in 1971. George and I were literally, he was not just my boss, we were best of friends. And he got me my first break. And it wasn't based on our relationship. It was really based on really understand what a high-performance team looks like, really understand what really great guest service is, really understand the business, which is basically no matter what role you're in, there's always going to be a metric or something behind the business. So if you're running the front of the house of a restaurant and you have to do 500 covers or serve 500 guests, there's going to be a per cap, means how much money they're going to spend. How do you improve upon that? So always use those key business metrics, and I made sure at every single role I had along my career pathing, I always looked at it from a team standpoint, a guest standpoint, and a business standpoint. So in my first 6 years with the company, hourly for a couple of years, traditional front of the house supervisor. Epcot opened in that window of time. I think it was the sexiest title ever. But my role was I was literally checking off recs on graveyard shift for the food that was being ordered for the restaurants in the middle of the night. I worked graveyard. I mean, I don't know how many of you ever worked graveyard before. I know you're out late at night, but working graveyard, there is not one thing that is great about graveyard, but I made sure it was great, that I took full advantage of it. And I think that allowed me to meet some of the best people in the business relevant to food and beverage, whether it was Ricky Debler at Mexico, Nelson Ying at the Chinese Pavilion, Guido Bianco at Alfredo's. So those relationships, these entrepreneurs that are out in the business that are world-renowned, the best, had the chance to get to know and work with them. And that really helped, that relationship building, which empathetically listening, understand what their needs are, but know there was a business that we would always make sure that at the end of the day we were serving them, but at the end of the day we knew it was a business, and we tied that team guest business all the way. So George was instrumental of helping me get to that level and then continue to grow. And I went into traditional resort sales in 1986. I got my big break because out at Epcot, we were doing catering events, special events for groups and conventions out there, and they were pretty, I would say, boring. So, you'd get your prime rib and you'd have, maybe a little vase of flowers on the tables and stuff like that. But at the time, my brother worked at Disney. My brother was the executive producer for the Sochi Winter Games. He just came back from Baku and was the executive producer for the games in Baku for the European Games, and now he's outside of Dubai, so he's a traveling gypsy. But he was a stage manager with Disney. He started as a production assistant and a stage manager, then became a producer. He was out at Epcot. We worked together, and instead of just doing what I would call flat catered events, we worked together and turned every environment into what he termed the showroom. So when you walked in to an event, it was something special. It wasn't just about the food and beverage. It was about the entire experience. So we were able to create different products out there from a catering aspect that went to the next level, which gave me a big break. I went into traditional business development after that, so any new product Disney was jumping into from that 86 to 88 to 89 timeframe, I was having a chance to start new businesses. Disney uses the term niche markets. Basically infant, get a couple dollars and learn how to grow them. And I got very lucky by trying a lot of those new markets, just those test markets, and got some breaks, and I'll save it. But that's how I got into sports.
You remember what Epcot stands for?
Every person comes out tired.
I was thinking more about the other one. Experimental
So
prototype
I'm a
community
big, I was with Disney 32 years, so they used to always use the old man as Disney heritage. So I used to always, and I still do it with my kids. I got very young kids, 12 and 10. I go on the Wedway People Mover in the Magic Kingdom, and they show Walt's vision of what the experimental prototype community of tomorrow is, the very, very first map. But when it opened up, it was so physically demanding, we came up with a new term for it.
I love it. I covered the grand opening for NBC.
Yeah.
It was quite a deal. In my class, we'll show a video, and I'll sometimes walk to a side board and write down some key things that I took away from the video to see if it compares with my students. I know it drives some of you crazy, and that's cool. What I heard is relationships, trust. Mm-hmm. George Kalogridis, who went on to run Disneyland and it's now running the whole enchilada here at Disney World, he's not going to stick his neck out for someone just because he's a buddy that he has beers with and watches ball games with. He's going to stick his neck out and recommend you because he knows you're capable of doing the job and you've demonstrated that you've been there through thick and thin on the graveyard shift.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And we talk about that, keeping it real and, relationships, building trust with your colleagues, being selfless, not necessarily worrying about your own accolades, but worrying about the team performance and generating revenue, et cetera. I think those are all really important things that you amassed over a career that got you to where you are today, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, exactly. So, and today, when you're looking at, when we do a job posting, those are the things that you definitely look for. So there's always going to be the desired qualifications that are on your resume. And those are all key. But how do you set yourself apart? That's in there. So basically, setting yourself apart from those desired qualifications is telling the story who you are. And then as telling that story who you are, it's not just about this, it's about your references. So how do you build those references? You're all young in your careers. It's the same way that I did it with George over 35 years ago. And it's not just that George is the president of Walt Disney World. It's, I was lucky enough to be the point to bring the National Senior Games to the Walt Disney World Resort in 1999. At the time, it was the single largest event that we ever did at ESPN's Wide World of Sports. And that organization went into disarray. So their executive director was let go. Their number 2 was let go. Their key volunteer president CEO left. The only person that was left was an administrative assistant, but through thick and thin, I treated that person that was here or the person that was here or the person at the entry-level position exactly the same. And that was right under that core training that I had at Disney was understand your guests and exceed their expectations. Right down the line. You treat everybody exactly the same with respect. Respect, appreciate, value everyone, right down the line.
It's such a crucial point that you make because at school and the work, people look at authority figures, supervisors, teachers, and they manage up, but they don't know how to manage sideways or manage down, if you will, people who are reporting below you in the org chart. I think these are very important points. I think about the way you're talking about your career maturing and your own maturation prepared you to have a lot of bosses now in your current role.
Yes.
You look at your current role now, you answer to 4 county commissions, a city commission, their various mayors, and there's an old adage that if you try to please everyone, you please no one. So I don't envy your role.
Yeah.
It's not a 9-to-5 role. I see you with a lot of networking functions, which speaks to my life as well. But at the end, we belong to a lot of the same organizations, so you have we have daytime jobs and we have nighttime jobs. Sometimes you can never turn it off. I mean, to a large extent. It's hard.
Yeah, so basically, you know, it's great to be introduced as the president and CEO of the Central Florida Sports Commission. You know, it's wonderful, but I do have bosses. Not a boss. My only boss is my bride, but I have bosses that are out there that we're accountable to. So honestly, my first boss is my team. You know, if I'm not a great leader in motivating them, then nothing happens. I mean, absolutely nothing happens. I could do the job of 15 people, but I have to lead 15 people to make sure they know exactly what they're doing in their roles. And then we have a board of directors of 25 people with 25 individual personalities. And our board includes Phil Rollins, the founder of the Orlando City Lions, Jason Siegel, who owns the Orlando Solar Bears, new player that you'll see here at some point, Dan Molaski, who leads the USTA, United States Tennis Association's new project out at Lake Nona. So leaders that own or lead franchises are our core. The other bucket of board members, the president of the Central Florida Hotel Lodging Association, hotel owners from the tourism community that are very well respected and leaders within that bucket of tourism. And then downtown business leaders. We have a whole bucket of downtown business leaders that are on our board of directors, and each one you have to treat the same, each one you have to treat very different with it to know that they're all very busy. You have to value their time. And how do you make what they're doing for the sports commission that's very relevant to them? Each of them have individual needs. Think about it. They're all president and CEOs of their own organizations, and they're used to calling the shots. You know, like, they're all used to calling the shots, and you got to manage 25 of them at the same time. That's within it.
When you talk about your sports commission and having to please so many constituencies, talk about your org chart to an extent. I know you have a head of events, you have marketing people, but you also have, for lack of a better term, caseworkers or account reps assigned to each of those constituencies.
Yeah. So we set up a very matrix organization. So again, our business is about events. We do two types of events, those big marquee events, again, that drive spectators into the stands, or the participant-based events like youth soccer tournaments. So we have a group that pursues. They're traditional business development folks, and we have a group of 6 that's all they do. They go out and find and value the right events, and it's not just one. We typically try to do our events on a recurring basis. So there's an event that you don't just bid on a lacrosse national championship that it's here 1 year, the next time it's here 10 years. You try to create a property where the rights holder likes it, we like it, and it draws a lot of visitors on a recurring basis. That's the exact model we used at Disney. Not many sports commissions use that model. They do the will you marry me shotgun approach to say, I got you this year, I got you next year, I got you next year after that. And it's like, how do you balance it? You know, you can't lead it, manage it. So we have a steady calendar of what we call recurring events. So you have that business development team that's accountable for that. Once they get it in the funnel, it turns over our event management team, basically the stage manager over here that does all the planning and with the rights holder to make sure there's flawless execution in it. Within that group, there's a finance group. That business development flows through, and that event management flows through. And outside marketing, and I call marketing it's more local PR, telling the story of who we are, what we do, because typically the rights holder is having that communication with the coach and the athlete that's coming in. But we also help to make sure there's a clear hierarchy. So when a person's coming into market, whether they're coming in for March Madness basketball or whether they're bringing their son and daughter to a soccer tournament, the clear hierarchy of sales is, I got to get a ticket or I have to register for the event. Our business is based on visitors and hotel room nights, so there's a clear hierarchy. They see registration, next is hotel, and then after that, attraction tickets along that line. So it's a seamless transaction in there. So our marketing group works together with the event management group to say every single event, working with the rights holder, even though we don't own that platform they're doing it on, that we're working with them, that they have that seamless transaction. It sounds very simple, but it's working with 50 different rights holders, 50 different events, along that line to get that in place. And then the last piece of it is just the basic HR function, the human resource function.
Thank you. I know that your team, Brent Nelson, people like that, they're constantly churning out RFPs, requests for proposals, something you'll learn about in the events class. We touch on it in mine. I see you around the country. I went to the Final Four a couple of years ago with my son, and we happened on each other at a cocktail party before the game. Didn't know you make it an annual pilgrimage with your buddies. I think that's really cool. You've been doing it, how many years have you been going to the Final
Since
Four?
87.
87, yeah, that's a hell of a string. I'm curious about how much evangelizing your team has to do to attract these events and how that process works, starting with the initial RFP.
Well, it's the sports business is so much different than any other business. It truly is 100% relationship business. As I always try to explain, when you're with a public official, whether you're a mayor or a county commissioner, we don't pursue events by running an ad in Sports Illustrated to say, hey, NCAA, bring your Final Four here. It is 100% relationship based. So we are out in the industry constantly. And industry doesn't mean going to a trade show to say, I'm going to buy the room keys for everybody to see the Central Florida Sports Commission logo on the room key. It's knowing who the right relevant person is that's the decision maker. So my team knows, and I use this going back to the George Kalogridis days, how many people ever worked in food and beverage? All right, so I always did this as a supervisor in a restaurant or a supervisor running a catering floor. There were two ways to know if your guest had a great experience. One was you're in the center of the floor leading. You know your service people can depend on you. They turn to you when they needed something. They know the guests are out there. They see you on the floor. Or you could stand at the Queen Mary. So after you bust the table, you throw the stuff on the Queen Mary. You see a lot of prime rib coming in. They didn't like the prime rib. So there's two ways to lead. So you're going to either be in the center of the floor or you're going to sit there. So I always tell my team today, if you're going to a show, you're not just registering and standing at that Queen Mary. You better make sure that if there's a board of directors meeting for like U.S. lacrosse, you find a way to get on that agenda. And finding a way means what's relevant to that person that's the president and CEO and each of those board members of the story that you could tell. Or if there's an agenda, you better make sure you're one of the presenters standing on the podium. You're not just sitting out in the house, standing at your trade show booth, ordering room service. You better be relevant at that show. You're not sitting on your heels. Yes, that takes training to get to that point, but that's what we try to do at the Sports Commission, just to make sure when we're sending someone out into the marketplace, they're not just, part of the room. They're the center of the room.
When I ran a 15-person communications group at ESPN and Disney, and I would dispatch a publicist or a director who reported in my structure to go to a conference, one of their responsibilities within 3 days of return was to do a presentation for the staff of who they met, what they did, give us a download. And it really puts the onus on you to make sure you're at those seminars and those various things. Do you do things like that?
Yeah, it drives you crazy because I sit on about 5-6 different board of directors meeting. I hear some folks will say, well, we just came back from a trade show and we brought 25 RFPs back. Okay, so you just went table to table and got 25 RFPs. There's a whole process to it. So there's much more storytelling to it with clear metrics behind it. So we do that same model, the prep on the front side. The prep on the front side helps you in show moment, and then that post-event summary is the true accountability on what was the real value is. Do we continue going there or we move onward and do something else?
You're getting great advice here from John Bisignano, the chairman, CEO of the Central Florida Sports Commission. As far as I'm concerned, when you do go to a conference, some of the best work you'll do will be during the breakout sessions in the hallway when you're meeting people who just spoke or about to speak. I think it's really important that you make the most of those opportunities when you're on these trips. Attend the seminars, but make sure that you're actually meeting people, connecting with them, talking about the things you've learned here at the school, things like that. Thank you. We worked together with the NCAA opening rounds last year, and it was about the same time your team moved into brand new, beautiful offices at Amway Center.
Mm-hmm.
You used to be nestled in this really tight house
Very nice.
in downtown Orlando.
Nestled. Okay.
Nestled.
I got that.
Yeah, it was tight quarters. What's it like going into Amway Center every day and going to work and, you know, on the way out, just feeling the excitement of things happening that you folks have had a handprint on, a fingerprint on?
Because the storytelling starts with Disney, I'll use it. The Amway Center is the Cinderella Castle of Central Florida, and that's our home. So and just to use a perfect example of how we use that. So when March Madness came through, Mike Slive, commissioner of the SEC, now recently retired, came in. Dan Mulaski with USTA, who wasn't part of our family back then, came in. Tom Pingle, USA Volleyball, came in. So when they came in and experienced that event, the big thing was I didn't know. I didn't know this was Orlando. I didn't know this was Central Florida. I always thought it was, the hotels that I drive and then the parks. Didn't know that literally the number one building in the country is sitting right here in your backyard. So you go into your office, you walk outside of your office, you're on the suite level, and you're just showcasing, this is my back porch. So it is a defendable competitive advantage that no other destination has. So when you're starting that relevant conversation to a rights holder, in this case, it's all about relationship, and you're bringing them into your home and into your backyard. It's like, holy cow, this is I'm in a world class. There's nothing else that's better out there. So it's the place to be. So I tell my team every day when you walk into that building, for the new team members that weren't part of the nestled, it was very difficult for a person in my role being at Disney for 32 years because everything was world class. If you're going to bring a rights holder into our old nestled building, did not set the tone of trying to tell your story of who you are, what you do, and how we're going to make it special for you when you're here.
It was a converted house, for those who don't know, and I used to have to park at a neighbor's driveway when I would go over there. So now you got the Geico garage.
It all feels great today.
Well, it's all grown so much, and you mentioned the media day that was very successful. I heard from our friends down the road at UCF, a member of the American Conference, that it went really, really well.
Who was there? Let's see. What did we talk about yesterday? Here's my buddy in the pink shirt. No pink shirt today. Are we on message on what we said we were going to talk about today? Yeah. That's it. That's perfect.
We'll get you Mike in a minute, and we'll hear more about what your experience. But from your perspective, we know we have that spring event coming up, the tournament itself here. We got other great stuff coming down the pike. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, let me hit the tournament first. So working at a sports commission really comes down to, again, those events just don't happen. First, you have to pursue them to bring them here. So, for instance, the men's basketball championship, in order to get that tournament, we competed against 6 different cities. And it's not just checking a box. You have to do those clear metrics. The RFP comes in, the request for a proposal. If you check the box, it's like, well, the rights holder, the person that owns the event, ask a lot of questions. And I have always coached my teams through the years. You don't have to give exactly what they said. This business is about relationships and negotiations. Everything's negotiable. And, in my old roles at Disney, when I was on the hotel side, basically you negotiated your hotel room and your meeting space. So your negotiating parameters were literally down to a couple things. In sports, your negotiating parameters, you could have up to 60, 70 things out of the box that you're negotiating, each line in the event profit and loss statement. So putting that response to RFP is, you don't want to give too much, but you want to make sure you acquire the event. So what is that win-win? It can't be just win for the client and holy cow, we got the event, but what was your acquisition cost?
Let's stop you there for a minute. You talk about media rights. ESPN successful enough to get Monday Night Football and move it from ABC, but they paid a fortune for it, more than any of the other bidders. And you'll see in media rights, for example, a television network will pay far more just because they absolutely had to have it. You have to be very careful about that because you don't want to give away the store, but you do run the risk of losing the event, and that happens a lot.
Yeah, so we do not unilaterally do this. So like in the American Athletic Conference Men's Basketball Championship, it's us, the Central Florida Sports Commission. It's Orlando Venues, who owns the Amway Center, and UCF. So we come together, and that local organizing committee still doesn't own it, because for this event to be whole, yes, it brings great visitors. Yes, it's on ESPN. But at the end of the day, on a direct basis, that means dollars in, dollars out on your profit and loss statement, there's not a lot of wiggle in there. There's the thinnest of margins on these events. So the county helps subsidize it a little bit with a grant. Not a little bit, a lot of it. We can't pursue it without a grant. The grant helps offset that. So you want to be able to tell the story internally to say, this is what our RFP is. Now, you don't want to send them a 100-page. We always do it in one-page executive summary to say, this is the event, the sizzle, in one line, by the way. Here's in a clear metric what it means to visitors and room nights and economic impact, and we put the acquisition cost in it. So we're like, in order to get this event, it's $10 a room night. You know, you don't want it to be $100 a room night, and if you get it under $10, that's a great day. So if you could compare it to how others, whether you're a hotel or a convention and visitors bureau brings a visitor in and how much they spend per room night, we want to make sure we're on par with that. So we measure everything. And that's the big, it's sexy to go out and negotiate and be out and go to the cocktail parties and everything, but you got to come back and just make sure that when you're putting the deal together, that's what you're negotiating to. Those are your parameters to get it to that. The internal group signs off on it. And, it's a short window process. You could get it done, but signs off on it. And then you could present it to your client at that standpoint to say, this makes the right business sense for us as a destination, and we think it's a win-win for the client. So
the client being the league.
Yes.
Okay. So another question, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn or giving away a trade secret. We were really concerned about pre-sale for the NCAAs here in Orlando. And you talked before about trust, and you talked before about relationships. We built a lot of trust as a local organizing committee, selling 10,000 tickets before it was ever announced that the University of Florida was going to be the highest-ranked team in the tournament. That's got to do wonders for you when you're having these type of conversations.
Yeah. So I use the term March Madness was here in 2004 and did not return to 2014. So the way that we planned and executed that event, the consistent line that we used at the Sports Commission was, this sets the tone for everything we do going forward. Right. And basically we set up, and George was an integral part of it, set up a local organizing committee where we met often. So basically, whether you're in the marketing arm, the sales arm, the event planning arm, but at the end of the day, everybody had accountability to let the community know to buy tickets. And it wasn't running your Dickie Vitale commercial on TV to say buy tickets. It didn't hurt. But it was,
you got him, didn't you?
Yeah, but it was the one-on-one relationships. Again, 25 board members, they all have relationships. You better be talking to your friends to buy tickets. All the community leaders and stakeholders talking to your friends, say, hey, this is it. This is a happening downtown. Mm-hmm. And guess what? We didn't oversell it. We have captured some great B-roll at the end of the event that every retailer, anybody that owned the business downtown said this was the best event we've ever had. We'd like to do this 365 days a year because it created sizzle. It was fun, it was exciting, but from a business lens, it was successful. And that success allows us to go out and continue to pursue. That our internal partners, internal stakeholders in this community said, yeah, they're smart. They know what they're doing. Let them continue to pursue.
We got COPA coming. What else we got coming?
Well, in this year, so 2016, I know we're still in 2015, but in 2016, the events that make the headlines that go into the new buildings. So first, the American Athletic Basketball Championships March. In December, the Women's College Cup will be in the new soccer stadium. So we worked closely with Phil Rollins' team at Orlando City and UCF to attract that event to come to here. We bid and were awarded that event. COPA, as George is referencing, was supposed to be awarded back in June. This is the second biggest event behind World Cup. So it's the championship of South America and Central America. Now they're adding North America to it. So you're bringing literally the top brands in soccer globally here, whether you're Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, bringing their national teams here. No offense if I missed anybody's national team in there, U.S. of course, with it to come into this market that will drive, first, a ton of international visitation, and two, bring excitement. I don't know how many were born in we're born in 1994, but downtown was rock and roll back in 1994. A lot of people remember that event on how cool that was to have here. And that event will be announced shortly that basically will bring 3 matches to the new to the Citrus Bowl actually in early June of 2016. So we continue to pursue those big events, but nobody cares about these other events that we do unless you're the parent or the coach or the child or you own a hotel on International Drive. But we have a 2,148 team volleyball tournament that brings 80,000 visitors that we just renewed the agreement based on the relationship with Disney, us, Orange County Convention Center, and state put a very sweet package together to keep that event here to allow it to grow. We have new events through USA Volleyball and USA Taekwondo that we pursued and brought that'll be in the Orange County Convention Center. And from a metric standpoint, this would opens eyes in tourism. Over the next 3 years, we'll put over 400,000 room nights in the iDrive area through the events that we're doing at the Orange County Convention Center. So that's something that we and the hoteliers know. We don't have to pound our chest. At the last Tourist Development Council meeting, Kathy Canning, who runs the convention center, and all the hoteliers that are on that board did this on our behalf to say, thank you, Central Florida Sports Commission, for pursuing these events. So nobody knows about those events. You don't read about them anywhere unless, again, your kid or you are actually participating in those types of events.
You mentioned 94 in the World Cup here. I was actually covering Korea against Norway in Washington, D.C., and they had spread World Cup games throughout the country. Orlando was awarded some, and that was the origins of the Sports Commission, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Talk a little bit what you know about the history of the organization since you brought up 94.
And I'll talk to it on a more national basis. Sports commissions are relatively new. So I think everyone knows what a Convention and Visitors Bureau is. Basically, they market the destination for tourism, and a lot of times their focus is bringing groups and conventions into the space, not just the leisure visitors. Sports commissions just a few years ago, there weren't many of us. We were really in our infancy out there. Not a lot of people really understood what sports tourism is. It was really the cities that were pursuing the Final Fours and the Super Bowls and such like that. But as the economy turned south in a couple cycles in the 90s, then again in 2007 and 8, when there was these big dips in the economy and in tourism, how do you fill rooms? Well, through our association, the National Association of Sports Commissions, we clearly had, again, that defendable competitive advantage to say we are resilient to any recession that's out there because parents do not compromise their trips for their kids. If their kid has a chance to compete in a regional championship or a national championship, they're going to find a way to go. They may cancel a vacation, but they're not going to cancel that trip, and we like to call it a sports vacation. They're not going to cancel that trip. They're going to go. So a lot of different cities quickly got into the business. So my old boss at Disney chaired it when it was founded in the early 90s. I actually chaired the organization when we only had 130 members, I believe we had, back in 2006 and 2007. Now we have 450 cities. So when I chaired it, I thought 130 cities was a lot of cities. It was absolutely crazy with it. So we, as a country, have 450 what I would call sports commissions that pursue events. Now here in Central Florida, the birth of ours started right literally during or after World Cup when the community realized, like, wow, we could bring a lot of people if we host sports events here. And that was the birth of it. So the woman, Joni Sherm, and then he just recently passed a couple of weeks ago, Fred Leinhart founded the Sports Commission. And we're 20 plus years into our journey.
When we talk about the Central Florida area, can you delineate the attractions and the sports components from the perspective that having Disney World and having Harry Potter at Universal and having SeaWorld certainly enhances all of your packages, but I would think your mission is to market this place that we all call home, some temporarily, some for life, as a sports town.
Yeah.
That we're more than just attractions. Not we're sports instead of attractions, but we all peacefully coexist to grow tourism.
Yeah.
And it's got to be interesting to manage that.
Yeah. So I'm going to look at it two ways. So relevant to you looking for a gig. We just hired 3 people for the Seminole County Sports Complex. Seminole County, I think, Lake Mary, Altamont Springs, going up that way, just invested $27 million into a new 15-field facility up there. So we're looking for 3 candidates to go find the right events for the facility. So what are those desired qualifications? We didn't need a baseball guy. But we needed someone that really clearly understood that it's a relationship-based business and that the alphabet soup of baseball and softball organizations, you needed to have that Rolodex in that space. The second piece we look for, and that's not the primary, they're all even. They understand tourism. So clearly understanding that, this is about visitors coming to the event. This is not about people or athletes coming to the event. This is about visitors. So how do you delineate the difference between a visitor and a person participating? So it's very easy. They got to occupy a room. So if there's a child that's from Orlando playing, they're more than likely not going to sleep in a room. So you got to make sure that you're targeting the right events for distant that are coming into market that are going to drive visitors. And that's an easy process, but you have to learn it and know it. And then the third piece, knowing that you're living in the #1 tourist destination in the world, you're more of a concierge. You got to have a passion to sell this destination. So we use the 4-pillar approach. It's real easy. First of all, we're a great destination. Think about it. We got great weather, 62 million visitors last year. We're the #1 tourist destination in the world for a reason. 2, great assets, and I say it's our world-class airport, our hotels and attractions. Third, which really, really supports the defendable competitive advantage, is venues. Venues. World-class $27 million sports complex going in Seminole County, Lake County, brand new world-class rowing center, brand new world-class beach volleyball complex. Orange County, obviously the downtown 3 venues that are going on. Osceola County has some great gems in the county, all new, all fresh, that are going on. So when we're pursuing those event rights holders that are out there, we got that venue piece. So the person just doesn't know baseball, but knows the ins and outs of the venue. And then the last piece I always call team. So again, it goes back to that team approach. You're part of a high-performance team. You know what teamwork is all about. But when you're selling it to a rights holder, guess what? We want you. It's not just me. Collectively as a destination, we have a team that understands who you are and what your needs are along that line. So when we're pursuing candidates, that's exactly how we look at the lens, is specific to those 3 roles. Yeah, they know a little bit about diamond sports, but they have to know a lot about the hotel piece. They got to have a passion to sell this destination. And of course, again, they have that business savvy, but they know that it all takes that team effort. They're not on an island doing this by themselves, that they're working with a team.
You certainly had your basic training at Disney where we live by the smartphone. What keeps you up at night?
Wow. She's my 10-year-old daughter. Well, from this standpoint, I've been in the industry 35 years. And, it's not the profit and loss team. So I wake up every day I know, and I learned this from a George Kalogridis. I learned this from Al Weiss, who's the former president of Disney, that recently retired. I used to play basketball with him, and I am really bad. But I learned one thing playing basketball with the president of
You
Disney.
let him win.
Well, no, I didn't have to defend him.
Let him dunk on you.
I was the 4. I'll be the one that rebound and pass it out to the three-point line. Rebound, pass it out to the three-point line. That's called job security with it. So I did a lot of that with it. But leadership truly sets the tone. So when I get up in the morning, we all got problems. We all got issues. But when I walk in that door, guess what? I set the tone. So, if I'm not smiling, my team's not smiling. If I expect them to perform, it really comes down to how you set the tone for that team. If the team is not performing, how do you do it? How do you create that sense of urgency? So again, I always go back to those very basic pieces. So Disney, when I left Disney, gave very, very basic tools. So when you're on a very basic interview going in there, you're going to see the desired job qualifications. You're going to say, okay, do I have those? But learn about the culture of that organization. So the first thing I did when I transitioned into this role 3 years ago, created a very, very simple work session to say new leader transition. Sounds really boring, but it really broke down that team, guest, business bucket and clearly defined what the expectations were, which means, under guest, I'm not texting them. I'm not emailing them. If there's a tough situation, I am always trying to do a face-to-face, do a phone call, followed by an email. And there's so many times that it's so easy to say, I just checked the box and I sent that note out and I feel good about it. Well, that person receiving it was like, what? What is this? If you put that note, billboard on I-4, all those eyeballs are like, whoa, holy cow, what did you just do? Along that line. So just make sure to really, really drill down and understand the culture. In our sports commission, we really set the tone. And it's a tool, even with the new employees that are coming into our organization, being a part of the team, they truly understand this is what a high-performance teams look like and define it. And in their performance development plans, there's clear definition of what they're accountable for, what a high-performance team looks like. So we call it an event cycle. So from a team perspective, what's your role in that event cycle? Under guest, you clearly understand where does a guest fit in the event cycle. Under business, where does it all fit? How are you integrated? And I love that term business savvy because there's no one formula. My wife leads the Run Disney line of business, and it killed me. I love my bride to death, and she's the boss of the house, but it killed me. Like, I transitioned to this role. We started the Daytona Beach Half Marathon. What it took for us to get to 1,500 registered runners, she creates the wine and dine in 30,000 in one night. It's like, shuts the system down in 2 minutes. It's like, you got to be kidding me. It's like, I know a lot of hard work went into it, but believe me, a lot of hard work went into our side of it too. We can't get to 1,500. You got 30,000 in one breath. But
it's like real estate, location
of course,
helps.
brand too to go with it. But it really comes down to, again, I'll say from a leader standpoint, what keeps me up at night is, as a leader, do I set the tone for my team so that they could perform? Because if the team is not performing, nothing follows. And the team is not just the people, the 15 people that are sitting in office. It's motivating your board, motivating your community partners, basically that we're relevant, that we're continue here to tell the story that sports really grows the community, and how is it relevant to you?
So the next question I really want you to hear more than any answer he's given today. Is it acceptable to you when you go to an employee to follow up on something that's in their hopper that they're supposed to be working on, and their response to you is, I sent him an email, I haven't heard back yet? You're a closer. You have a closer mentality.
Yeah, that's
Don't get him
the
started.
simple answer is unacceptable. The most important thing is you have accountability. You have 100% accountability in it. So if your leader's creating a sense of urgency, and you say, I shot an email, I'm waiting for a response back, that's not the right response, under any condition.
So when we talk about key skills and responsibilities for an entry-level employee, learning the culture of your organization is important, but I would think anticipating the questions that are going to be asked is also important. What else comes to mind when someone comes out of school and is fortunate enough to get a role in your organization or one you're associated with?
Well, I'll tell you, you just got to be ready to perform. So, it really, and I'm going to break it down into 3 buckets. So basically, in the interview process, did you do your homework? I mean, it's so easy to do research nowadays. Did you really do your homework? Was it just, oh, I see this job is posted, I'm going to post for it? And if you're lucky enough to get the interview that way, hopefully you really did your homework, went to the website. As George said, we hosted March Madness last year, so hopefully, not last year, in the time we were interviewing the candidates, it was within a couple weeks of March Madness. So hopefully, within your discovery of questions that you have, that you'd ask questions about it or expect questions about it. So preparation, that was Sergio Zeman, a former Coke executive, said preparation for that interview is second. Second, in that interview process, if you know there were some really hot buttons that person gave you the smile, the nod, or right on, when you write that thank you letter back and get it out that day, don't be afraid to punch those points. So if you're getting a really good positive vibe back in that interview, that there was a point you saw a positive nod in the head or you got the answer back from whoever you saw, punch that point in your thank you. And then, again, if you're called back for that interview with it, just remember what you said in that first time around and what some of those questions were coming through. Like in these roles for Seminole County Sports Complex, there's really some strong candidates. We had them do business plans. They all talked about how good they were because that was one of the desired qualifications. They all did business plans. One was good, one was a little better, and one was clearly outstanding. The one that had the clearly outstanding business plan relevant to the Seminole County Sports Complex is in his seat today. So
Let's open it up for some questions. If you have a question, we're going to have a couple of mic holders coming around. John, this has been great. I really appreciate you being here today. You've done a marvelous job, and it is.
I want to see my friends ask questions that I was with yesterday, because what did we talk about yesterday? We had some really good time. I said, you're coming?
We got a question up front here. Is there a mic for him? Thank you.
Just
Is this for George or is it for me?
Hopefully it's for him.
This is for you. One thing coming out of college, this is one thing that you kept in your mind that you said, okay, I can never forget this.
Coming out of college?
Coming out of college.
What was the thing that
you said, okay, I can never forget this coming out of college?
Well, it's not an answer you want to see. I was scared. It was like, I was ready to roll. I mean, I got into Gran Torino and drove, 1,200 miles down Route 95 to Disney thinking, what the heck am I doing? I'm going to go. I'm leaving the comfort of Bristol, Connecticut, where I knew everybody, and I'm moving down to Florida where I knew nobody. It was just that positive attitude to say this is a new chapter in the journey and have confidence and just go. There's a lot of people that have mentored you through your life, but it's going to come down to your decision on what you want to do, but hopefully you use those. And that's what I did. My dad owned a spring manufacturing plant. He expected his son to take over a spring manufacturing plant. He was the patriarch of Bristol, Connecticut. I could have stayed there and lived a long, happy life making springs or leading a spring shop. My brother did the same exact thing. He followed me a year later down to Disney. We never looked back. It was onward.
Is the business still intact? The brothers running?
Nope.
So you got no fallback plan?
Nope.
Any
Not
other
one
questions?
nickel.
We're up front here.
For you, what is your most effective way in creating opportunity to close some of the deals that you close?
Wow, I would call it the clearest. If you can remember this, LEAP. L-E-A-P, LEAP. Listen, empathize, act, and produce. LEAP. Listen. First, That person that's sitting across from you, it is this. Eye contact, you make sure, and I always say this because I am a little slow. Do you mind if I take notes? And one thing I really hate, because if somebody says, do you mind if I use my laptop to take notes? Absolutely not. I don't mind if you hand take notes, but don't get that thing out because you're going to wander off somewhere else in a boardroom or something like that. It's listen, act, listen, empathize. Empathize means whatever they said, you're repeating back. So you're negotiating deal terms because it's so complex. I'm writing this down. Okay, let's cover those last 5 points. Boom, 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 boom. We got it? We got it. So that means you listen to exactly what they said. You empathize or repeat it back. Act is you quickly turn it into deal terms. Is this what we discussed? So a deal term could be a one-sheeter or 20 pages, but you act instantly to said, hey, we're on the same page with this, then produce, which means you close it. So if they agree to all those deal terms, you quickly translate that into paper along that line. And that, to me, I train everybody, and I put a little leap card next to their desk to say, here's the funnel. Listen, empathize, act, produce.
Give him the mic back for a second. What does LEAP stand for?
Listen, empathize, act, produce.
That's the man right there. Questions? Up back there. I thought I was going to catch you.
First of all, I would like to thank you for dedicating some time today. I guess my question is, I'm pretty close to graduation, and I too am in that scared position. You talked a lot about networking and growing that circle and making that circle get a little bit bigger around you and being in the right position and filling those Rolodex. Is there any advice coming out of school to position yourself in such a way to be within those circles and grow those connections?
Great question.
It's a very good question, and George knows him well. Bob Bodine, who's a head hunter that's out there, he wrote a book, The Power of Who, and George is laughing, but so basically, this is not a spiritual thing, but Jesus had 12 apostles, and 3 were his favorite, and 1 was the one. So he said, basically, if I go out in the industry and I got to look, friends, they'll always say, you're the who, along that line. So because I really genuinely care about them, so you have to figure, don't start with 12, don't start with 1. Who's 3? Who's 3 that are going to help you on this journey? So basically, you got to hook into that, and it basically is, how am I going to help you first before you help me type deal to establish that relationship. So let me give you a good example. Steve Penny is the president of USA Gymnastics. We consider ourselves brothers. So Bob calls it the power of who, and you're 12. My dad used to send oranges back in the 60s and 70s. I moved to Florida, not a nickel in my pocket. I started sending oranges to all his paisans. Now my orange list is, my God, every key person in the sports business, whether they're commissioners or executives. So Steve's one of them, president of USA Gymnastics. Yeah, this one guy, Mark Cauldron, that just recently lost his job. Biz, I need you to help Mark. I'll be glad to help Mark. I've met Mark 3 or 4 times, had him talk to Phil Rollins, had him talk to Dan Molaski. So Phil, Orlando City, USTA, he wanted to stay local, to Steve Hogan. So Steve, Mark, best friends of Steve in his who, top 3. Steve calls me, who's in my who, and I'm like, okay, Steve, if this guy's important to you, he's important to me. I let him in my who along that line to basically say, yeah, it's important that these guys take the time to talk to him. So it's establishing, get someone that you could depend on, that basically you've done something for them. You're reaching out to them. You're not just calling them for favors. It's going back. You're here. How can I help you along that line? And then, you know what? There's a lot of networking functions out here, and I'll always say it this way. Bob Vecchione is in my who. He, basically NACTA, the National Association of Collegiate Directors of Athletics and Sports. It's here 6 of the next 9 years. He always pulls interns in. Don't just apply to be an intern. How do you get a relationship with Bob? Bob comes here 6 times a year for site visits. Hey, Bob, when you're here for your site, is there a way to set it up? How do you get into Bob's who along that line. So when NACTA's in town and you got every D1 college athletic director here, maybe you could stand on Bob's side and not just be that intern, and he could introduce you someone to open up some doors. But it really is the who. You got to hook into somebody that's going to help connect you. And I hope that Steve Penny example was a really good example, because guess what? That is exactly how it works. A lot of my candidates, when my VPs come to me to say, here's my final 3 candidates, I look at this piece first under the team guest business lens, but I look at those recommendations. Did you talk to the recommendations? Well, no, I didn't. No. What? What were those recommendations? In each of those candidates, I had a relationship some way, somehow with on the recommendations on the resume that I felt comfortable making the call to say, tell me about this person.
I would also ask you to build on that in addition to the who and getting the introduction, you better have your elevator speech.
Yep.
You better be able to land the plane, as Mark Quinzel used to say at ESPN. He helps run the NFL Network now. You got about 30 seconds of somebody's attention or less. Hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm interested in doing this, but I'm also happy for any other role you think's right fit. You better have that down, because that who can be a disaster if you don't have your act together and you're looking for people to answer all of your internal questions, but you haven't communicated a purpose. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, exactly. And then let's go back to the leap piece. So it's not my 15-second elevator speech or this. If they were speaking on a panel, what popped out? Just say, hey, I like that point. Oh, great. And then shake hands. Yeah, this is who I am, blah, blah, blah. You're 10 seconds there. But again, make it relevant. It's not just about pounding yourself on the chest for that 15 seconds. But yes, that has to be tight. So many different times, someone will come up bright-eyed, I love sports. I don't know what the heck that means. And by the way, I don't know, if you looked up, I was really bad. I played JV basketball, but I got to go off on a tangent for a second. My high school buddies all played college ball. When ESPN's Why Will the Sports Open, we had these interns from all over the country and that played D1 ball, and I was playing with them. So I'm old. I played into my early 50s playing hoop. So my high school buddies would come down on vacation and play, and I got the ultimate compliment. Biz, you're playing basketball better now than you did in high school. I could have taken that two different ways. Was like, well, back in high school, I can't use the word, but I was really bad. But at least they're saying I was better than when I was really bad 40 years later.
The equipment's a lot better. Back then you had the peach baskets.
Yeah, that's it, exactly, along that
Front
line.
row here. That's you.
Again, thank you for coming and speaking with us today. Being the president and CEO of the Central Florida Sports Commission, do y'all offer any internships throughout the summer, any time of the year?
Yeah, simple answer
Our
is yes.
first job applicant today.
Yeah.
Good job out of you.
So Josh has been great to us. I've been in my role 3 years with it, and Josh has done a great job with our team. So whether they're full-time internships or whether they're coming into specific windows working different events, Josh has been a great link, and Jennifer Lastic from our team and Brent Nelson from our team really lead that charge of bringing really good candidates into the fold. And I would have to say, let's see, we've had at least 3 permanent hires through Full Sail on our staff.
Yeah, it was a pleasure working the NCAA with you and seeing Enrique and some of our early
Yeah.
graduates working for you. And
Enrique
we
was a
appreciate
rock
it very
star,
much.
man.
Good man. Moved out to LA, I think. Yeah. Any other questions, guys? We got time for a couple more if there's any more.
Yes.
Easy on the mic, please.
So we're going to talk about the college loan and how I could help you.
Yes, that's what I wanted to talk about. My main question was, what's the hardest part about being a president and CEO of a company?
I'll tell you what, the 2 things were, A, setting the tone to motivating the team. That's the first piece. The second piece is working at Disney for 32 years. I always say this, they kept us behind the curtain. Behind the curtain means from a government relations side, where you were, Disney gave me, and I'm being selfish here, a great opportunity because Disney was a great platform to get out into the sports marketplace. You knock at the door, somebody's going to take your call if you're Disney calling. And I always use that to my advantage to get out. That's how I got to know the sports marketplace, whether it's a conference commissioner, an AD, an executive director from a national governing body of Olympic sports, go across any of the spaces. I got a great Rolodex there, and that's how I pitched it. The one thing I didn't learn was 80% of my time would be spent on the public sector on the government relations side, working with county commissioners, working with county mayors, city mayors, working with tourist development councils and such. That, to me, was the biggest learning curve. Exhilarating, because that was like the white canvas coming in. Had no experience in that. Politics is, you got politics inside big businesses, but real politics and big business politics are two very, very different things. And over the last 3 years, had a really good chance to learn that. And that's something I didn't know when I took the role, and it's something that I'm really I get excited about, because I learn every day, because I'm not perfect. I don't think anybody's perfect in the space, but I'm certainly not perfect in that space.
So you like acronyms, RHIP. Rank has its privileges or rank has its pitfalls?
Wow. I'll take both. I'll take both. I'll tell you, it's responsibility. The whole thing comes down, you just got to be ready to lead and ready to, we're not perfect, and you got to be ready to take the hits.
Good. Any other questions, guys? Please.
Anyway, have you ever had a situation where there's a marquee event that you really wanted, the county really wanted, even the state may have even really wanted, but you knew it was going to hurt another local team? Like you have the Final Four, but it's going to hurt the Solar Bears because they have like their biggest game of the season during that. How would you handle something like that?
Well, it's a very relevant question. So at the Sports Commission, because we've had those hiccups with it, so we plan to do it more often, but we launched a very, very, very difficult name. We call it the Event Committee Meeting. And that is every franchise owner and building owner, we sit once every other month together. Now, most of them happen to be our board members. So whether it's Alex Martin's on the Magic, when's he pursuing the NBA All-Star Game? When are we pursuing the next rounds of March Madness? When is Alan Johnson going to plug in a Paul McCartney concert along that line? We are literally, you got all the players. Who's going to populate the Citrus Bowl? It's not just Florida Citrus Sports. We play an active role in that space. Who's in the new soccer stadium? It's not just the Orlando City Lions, even though they own that stadium. We're in there. We literally lay out 5-year plans for each venues. And again, we sit down, we look at our 5 years out on what we're pursuing, and then we also look at what events we have and how we can help each other. Like, for instance, Alan Gooch has the Cure Bowl that's coming up. How does he sell tickets? Well, it's not just running the AutoNation, commercial on TV along that line. It's getting into how's the Magic going to help them? How's the Solar Bears going to help them? How's the Orlando City Lions going to help them? How's UCF's going to help them? So everyone's sitting at the table collectively, because we all know sports grows this community. We want to all help each other to succeed. But to get very, very specific on those hiccups, I don't care what space you're in. Whether you're in the sports space, meeting and convention space, there are going to be hiccups where you kind of like double block the space or something along that line. You find a way. And yes, there is hurt in there. Hurt for us, hurt for the rights holder, but you find a way to get through it.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you for your
question.
time, too.
How about 2 more questions? Any more? Or are we done?
Leap, listen, empathize, act, and produce. Along that line, just got to remember that one in your interviewing process when you're sitting down and there's something, a good buzz, a good vibe from that person across from you and is giving you the nod. Just remember, hey, that was the hot button. Let me follow that up when I'm shooting a letter back to them. And that's it.
Great job.
All right, we got one more
we
right
got
here.
one more? Okay.
How you doing? My name is Jay, and my question is, if you find a intern that capitalizes on LEAP, but has some pitfalls, some things that you think you can mold, do you navigate them to the right process, or do you feel that you can find a better candidate that can fit that? Like you said, if you have 4 individuals and one did great, exceptional, good, and okay, do you just follow up with someone else, or do you mold that individual?
Yeah, well, we use a clear metric, but yes, if we'll take the time to train and develop people, specifically in a technical skill side. I'm not going to know how to do a tournament bracket. I'd be the last person who knows how to do a tournament bracket, nor do I care. But if it's a desired skill that we have to train for someone, knowing that in the role, we'll take the time to do that. So realistically, it's the 3 biggest pillars that are out there is team, guest, business. The team, guest, business piece, LEAP is very relevant in team. LEAP is very, very relevant in guest. So we always look at, and I'm very, very proud. Today I had a meeting with our 3 new team players that all 3 of them came in on the last 2 weeks, and 1 seasoned vet right before I came over here. And first thing I said to them, I absolutely love what I see out of the team lens. Because the person before that, exceptionally strong technical skill, exceptionally great with guests, but as soon as they walked into the office, it was, oh my God, what the heck is going on? There was this bad vibe. And I can't go into the details on it, but the team piece just did not work and had to quickly, in the probationary period, transitioned out. Even though there was a lot of coaching under that team lens to say you're part of a high-performance team, you have to understand what teamwork looks like, it was just a total missing piece. So it's realistically all those trainable things that are under team, guest, business. If it fits, we're going to try to coach you through that. And then if the role is there, obviously we're going to look at you first. Definitely look at you first versus going external because you're already part of the culture. You understand team, you understand guests, you understand business. We know you, you know us. That's 90% of the trainings right there, so it makes it easy.
Well, clearly, Jay, you're not going to get an internship with the organization unless they think you have the basic skill sets. Yep. And if during a finite period of time, John, you have not picked up on the culture and what it takes to be a right fit employee there, you're probably not the right fit.
Yeah, exactly.
This has been terrific. Let's have a big round of applause for John Bisignano. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Real pleasure. Thank you for joining us here at the Campus Conversation. We look forward to seeing you again.